Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time the question comes to us from Waichu. I might be saying that wrong, so apologies. But anyway, I'm going to do something a little different this time. I'm going to read and tackle this question in segments, since there's a few different points or questions there to respond to. Anyway, they said this. Hey Thor, since I've been following you recently, I've noticed you do not seem to be a fan of Grey Jedi and the concept of it. I agree to the idea that the Sith have an ideology that is seductive and often self-destructive. Their way is definitely not the way to go. But on the other side of the scale, the Jedi try to block themselves off from emotions like love and hate, since they are roads to the dark side, but this only made them more susceptible to those emotions when they felt them. Okay, so first of all, slight correction here, and please do not take offense to any of this. This is just a topic I am kind of passionate about, let's say. And I'm not trying to call you out or attack you or be an ass to you or anything of the sort. I very much appreciate the questions. But first of all here, the Sith way is always self-destructive, always. Only misery for the self as well as others comes to those who are as selfish as the Sith are, who can only think inward and about the self and how to gain more and more power or more stuff or to even achieve immortality. This is why, if you would or could ask him, George Lucas would tell you there can only ever be two of them at a time because they will not or cannot share power. There can only be the one who has the power and the one who desires it. And the one with the power is always leery of the apprentice, and the apprentice is always trying to kill the master and to take his place and become the most powerful. And usually with the help of an apprentice of their own, which, yeah, kind of means oftentimes there are actually three of them, but the power structure between them is essentially the same. Also, Jedi do not try to block themselves off from emotions or pretend they don't have them or anything of the sort. That is 100% wrong. But for whatever reason, it is a very, very common held belief. And I get that it is maybe kind of the impression that one might come away with after the prequels. After the Jedi certainly come off feeling very aloof, arrogant, and even detached at times. Or like they think they are better than everyone else. Especially in the Jedi Council, it seems. But no, they have feelings. They don't try to suppress them or anything or deny they have them. And they can have friends and all that good stuff as well. There's even a really, really good scene between Anakin and Obi-Wan in Season 6 of the Clone Wars that goes into a little of this.
You've met Satine. You know I once harbored feelings for her. It's not that we're not allowed to have these feelings. It's natural.
Senator Amidala and I are simply friends.
And friends you must remain.
Basically here, the Jedi are the opposite of the Sith, where they, the Sith, only are selfish and full of hate and bring misery to all. The Jedi are selfless, full of love, and bring joy to all, including themselves. Their way of life, though a hard one, is a very, very rewarding one. And yes, love is very much at the very core or the foundation of the Jedi and their beliefs, or how they behave. It's about having compassion, and I think Anakin puts it the best right in Episode 2.
Compassion, which I would define as unconditional love, essential to a Jedi's life. So you might say that we are encouraged to love.
And I don't know why that scene gets missed or ignored by so many who want to make the argument that they, again, suppress emotions or whatever, because it flat out dismantles that belief. And again, I'm not saying that you, the commenter here, is doing that or arguing that exactly, but a lot of people seem to think the reason Anakin fell to the dark side is because the Jedi wanted him to be this kind of heartless, unfeeling robot who could not have any friends. When in all reality, it was no secret he was friends with Padme and was hanging out with her in his free time. That was actually all well and good and no violation of any Jedi code or anything like that. Where Anakin goes wrong, however, is being attached to Padme to the point where he could not live without her, he couldn't let her go. Being so close to her that when push came to shove in Revenge of the Sith, he made the decision to try and save her at the cost of the galaxy, essentially. And obviously, as a Jedi, you cannot do that. But if you do fall in love and want to devote your life to another person, you are certainly free to leave the Order and do that. Even Obi-Wan says he would have left the Order for Satine.
All right. Had you said the word, I would have left the Jedi Order.
And so no, Jedi do not block themselves off from emotions like love. They fully embrace love, probably more so than anybody else in the galaxy in a sort of way.
Seeing you alive brings warm feelings to my heart.
And they don't exactly try to block themselves off from hate either, but I'll get to that in a bit or in a response to another part of your comment. And so let's continue on here. And the Jedi's arrogance and belief in their own superiority is what eventually led to their downfall at the end of the Clone Wars, since they had a system that had not undergone any significant changes in the last millennium. And yes, it was basically arrogance that played a huge role in their downfall, but it wasn't the system that failed the Jedi, it was the Jedi who failed the system, or they who had lost sight of their true purpose as Jedi, which isn't to be direct servants of the Republic like we see them in the prequels, and to the point where they became an enforcement arm of it, and even were, you could say, tricked or forced into becoming generals and fighting for one side in a war when they really should have been mediators trying to end the war. But anyway, the purpose of the Jedi is quite simply to just serve the Force, or the will of the Force, to listen to it and try to carry it out. And via that, they will serve the people of the galaxy by trying to find and maintain a balance, since balance is what is best for everyone, and that's what the Force wants.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
But it's not to, again, be so entangled with the Republic and so dogmatic about following the Jedi Code down to the letter that when the Force pretty clearly requires something of them, they not only kind of miss it, they even argue against doing it. An example of this would be how Qui-Gon was, quite clearly I'd argue, meant to find and then train Anakin, but the Council said no because the Code forbid him to take on a second apprentice, when in all reality, do you think the Force cared about that rule? Or do you think it just wanted him to train Anakin? So no, I don't think the problem was the Jedi needed to change with the times or update their code or core principles after 1,000 generations of them working just fine. Basically, a system is only as good as those who use it or implement it. You could, for example, design a near-perfect system of government that in theory is completely fair to all, but in practice that wouldn't exactly stop those in charge or who are running it from being corrupt and trying to use it to their advantage, and it not working as intended. Another sort of example, though more on the individual Jedi level now, is a person could, say, be given Hugh Jackman's Wolverine diet and workout plan, how to get into that kind of incredible shape we see him in the X-Men movies, but just because you know it doesn't mean you can follow it or want to follow it, and just because you can't follow it doesn't mean others can't or that it doesn't work for them. Clearly it works for Hugh Jackman. Just like with being a Jedi, it requires a different level of dedication, a different mindset from the norm, and not everyone has that within them, and that's fine because not everyone needs to be a Jedi or Wolverine, but those who do have to live that life, or by those rules, or by those ways. Again here, the Jedi were failing the system. They were failing to follow the Force and paying the price for it by growing weaker, as Windu even points out, and the dark side was growing stronger, which is a big part of the reason why they were destroyed. And with that, let's get back to the comment now. Would a gray Jedi not be an ideal middle ground since they recognize the darkness that exists within themselves and everyone else, and are attuned enough to it that they can resist going to the dark, and are aware to the dangers of becoming complacent and arrogant, and can make steps to not reach that point? I'm curious as to hear your side of it, since I love hearing other differing opinions, and I find that debate can often expose me to ideas that I might not have considered. Alright, so I think the first thing I'd have to ask is, why do you have to be attuned to the dark side to know it's dangerous? And I know these might be some really stupid examples, but do I have to eat a little bit of ice cream every so often to remind myself it can make me fat? Do I have to swim in shark-infested waters once in a while to remember I could be eaten by them? Do I need to punch a random person in the face from time to time to recall that hurting others is wrong? So do I then have to dabble in the dark side a bit to be reminded that I shouldn't use it? And again, I know these are kind of stupid examples, but my point is that you don't necessarily need to experience something to understand that it could be detrimental, dangerous, or wrong. And the thing the Jedi do, or are supposed to do, is they're supposed to recognize the dark side within themselves and flat out reject it. There's this fantastic episode of the Clone Wars in Season 6, or a great arc actually, though the part I talk most often about is in one particular episode, that being the one called Destiny. Anyway, in this episode, Yoda meets with a Force priestess who puts him through a little trial, and during this trial, Yoda encounters what is essentially a dark side version of himself. And the only way he can finally defeat it is to recognize it is and always will be a part of himself, that there is a dark side in Yoda, but he rejects it.
Recognize you, I do. But power over me, you have not. Through patience and training, it is I who control you. Control over me, you have not. My dark side, you are. Reject you, I do.
The same way a Jedi who, yeah, has feelings and emotions, that they might get angry, but they will recognize that anger and not use that negative emotion to fuel them. Also, it's not like there's any sort of benefit to using the dark side to some extent. What I often ask people who bring up the dark Jedi and using both the dark and the light is, what's the practical application here? What exactly are the Jedi going to do when they use the dark side? Because it's not like they're missing out on something by not using it. It's not stronger than the light side. It's just, to quote Yoda here, it's quicker, it's easier, it's more seductive. Which basically means it's easier to get pissed off and to act aggressively than it is to stay calm and seek a potentially peaceful resolution, or to fight only if you absolutely have to, and only to defend yourself or others. And so, to be blunt, and once again nothing but thanks to the commenter here, I hope if you watch this video you don't take any of this the wrong way or like I'm attacking you, and you are absolutely free to rebuttal in the comments below. But the reason why I hate the idea of Grey Jedi is because the belief that it could be the right way seems to come from a fundamental misunderstanding of what the Jedi even are or how they function and operate. It always seems to come with it this belief that they, the Jedi, don't have feelings or emotions, or like they live this way rigid lifestyle and do nothing but meditate all day long, and that's about it. When in reality they certainly do have feelings and emotions, and they allow themselves to experience them. Again, they can have friends, they can go out and do things. They just can't become so attached to those things that they become possessions to the point where they will forsake their duty as a Jedi and perhaps make a decision that will lead to some sort of disaster for everyone. Well, that's going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about the concept of Grey Jedi. Do you agree with me and think that it just doesn't make any sense? Or maybe you want to make a counter argument, and you again are free to do that. Or you can also just leave a question for a future lightning response video. You just got to start it off with "Hey Thor" and then ask away. But whatever you choose to do, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.